Hi boys and girls, and welcome to Art Club Week 7. Our project this week is puppy portraits. We're taking our inspiration for this week's project from an Australian artist named Britty M, who you can see here with her artworks. And she creates these amazing portraits of dogs in jumpers, which we are going to do ourselves this week. She created these to raise awareness for all the dogs in shelters who needed to be adopted and find their forever homes, which I thought was a great idea for us to draw some inspiration from. For your project this week, you'll need your 2 tubes of paint from your take-home art kit. They look a little bit different to mine, they're a little bit smaller. You'll also need a paintbrush from your kit, a lead pencil, a black texter, a rubber, and a piece of plain white paper. It's also a good idea to grab a little cup of water so you can wash your paintbrush, and something to put your paint on, like a paper plate, or maybe you have a piece of cardboard. Make sure you check with mum or dad before you use anything at home to put paint on. You'll also need a picture of a dog. And this is the picture that I'm going to use for my own artwork today. You might like to use the same picture, or you could use a picture of your own dog if you have a pet dog at home. If you really want to, you could even use a picture of a cat or a rabbit, but I'm going to demonstrate using a picture of a dog. So make sure you have this ready to help you draw the beginning of your doggy portrait. Now we're going to start off by drawing the face of our dog, and I like to start by drawing the nose of the dog first because I think that's the most important part of a dog's face, and we can work out the rest of the face from there. So you can start by drawing a picture of his nose in the middle of your page, and use my page for reference. So you can see I've put that in the middle of the page, and I want my artwork to take up sort of the majority of the page. So don't do it very small, try and take up most of the page. And as you draw, you want to pay really close attention to the shape of the dog's nose and the shape of the dog's eyes, and you want to use nice rounded ovals to create those shapes. And you can see here in the dog's eyes, I've put a little circle up in the top right corner to make it look like the light is glinting off the dog's eyes to give it a bit of a cheeky look. So you might like to do that too. And once you've drawn in your dog's 2 eyes and its big nose, you want to try and draw in the mouth right below the nose. So pay attention to whether dog has a straight line for a mouth, and add that below. The next thing that you want to pay attention to, which I'm starting to do in my drawing here, you can see, is pay attention to the length of the fur on the dog's face. So we can see here in the picture of this schnauzer that he's got very long fur around the bottom of his face, which I'm adding in now. So I'm doing long rounded eyes to show the part of his fur looks a little bit like a big moustache, and same with the fur above his eyes is a little bit longer to create his long white eyebrows. So if your dog has long fur, you want to draw long lines. You don't have to draw in every single bit of fur that's on your dog's face. You just want to get a sense of whether your dog has long or short fur, or a mixture of both like this one here has. So I've added in the long fur around his face, and I might go back and add in a little bit more later, but I can see he's got some short fur around his eyes and his forehead and on his ears. So I'm showing that by adding in short little lines, and those lines get longer and longer the further we move down his face, as you can see in my portrait here. So pay really careful attention to what type of fur your dog has. So make sure you're using short lines for short fur and long lines for long fur. You also want to pay attention to whether that fur is curly or straight or a little bit scraggly like this dog. So if your dog has straight fur, you want to make sure you use straight lines to show that fur. Or if the dog has curly or scraggly rough fur, you can use zigzag, wavy or curly lines like I have on this dog's ears. The next step is to add in a jumper. Perfect for winter. So you want to start by drawing some round shoulders and bring the line of the shoulders right down to the bottom corners of your page, and then add in a round jumper collar like I have here, which we're going to paint later. After this, it's time to add in some funky background wallpaper, and we can see Britty likes to use these in the background of her own dog portraits. So it's up to you what you would like to include as your pattern. You could add some flowers or some interesting shapes like she has, or you could pick something that your dog likes. Maybe you could do a bone pattern. I've decided to do some bananas because I love bananas, and I've also got some yellow paint, so I felt like that would look really good in the background. So it's up to you what pattern you choose to put in the background. You could do bananas too if you like. You just need to make sure it repeats through the background, and you might like to challenge yourself to show that pattern continuing behind your dog. So just showing a little bit of it peeking through behind it, like he's or she's standing in front of the wallpaper, and show it continuing along the sides of the page like I have here. This is an optional step. If you would rather just keep your pattern just on the page, you can do that too. And after you do that, you might like to start touching up and adding a little bit more fur or a little bit more shading to your dog, like I'm doing at the moment. This is another optional step. It just depends on how detailed you would like to get with your dog portrait and how much time you have. So if you do have the time, it's good to try and draw in a few of those really prominent features on your dog's face. So I decided to make his moustache stand out a little bit more, and make his eyes stand out and his eyebrows stand out a little bit more, because these are really strong features of the dog's face that I really want to stand out to whoever's looking at my artwork. So you might like to do the same thing with your artwork. Definitely try and make your dog's eyes and your dog's nose stand out as much as you can by shading it in black with your pencil. And we're going to add some black texture to it later at the end of our artwork. After you are happy with your drawing, it's time to add some paint. So make sure you put a tablecloth down or do your painting on top of a piece of cardboard in case your paint goes through your page. Now you'll need something to put your paint on, like a paper plate, or I've just used the lid of a tin. You'll also need a cup of water to wash your paintbrushes, like I've got here, a little cup of water. And you might also like to put on a paint jacket and definitely roll your sleeves up so you don't get any paint on your clothes. So you want to start off by choosing one of your colours. Now one of your colours is going to be the collar of your dog's jumper. So I decided to make that yellow because you might like to use the other colour to paint the wallpaper in the background. So when I finish with this dog jumper collar, I'm going to paint my bananas. Make sure you don't add too much paint on your paintbrush, otherwise it'll take a long time to dry. Make sure if you're painting something with that's really little, just use little strokes. It's okay if you go a little bit outside the lines because we're going to go over it with black texture at the end. If you don't want to use paint to colour in your background because you'd like to use some different colours, that's fine. You can just use some coloured pencils or some textures to colour in the background. Now that I'm finished with my yellow paint, I'm going to wash my paintbrush, or I think I've actually got a different paintbrush here that I'm going to use. So I'm going to use that completely clean brush, so make sure you don't have any of the other colour on your paintbrush. We're going to use our second colour to paint our jumper. So you want to start by going around the outer edges first to make sure you're staying within those lines. So start by going around the outside of the jumper, around the shoulders, around the arms, and then once that's done, you can paint the middle of the jumper. So make sure you're using straight strokes to paint around the edge of the arms, and then once you're feeling in the middle of the jumper, you can use some rougher strokes to show that it might be a fluffy jumper. It's up to you. you paint, just make sure you're putting just a little bit of paint on your paintbrush as you go, because we want to leave our painting to dry for a little bit so we can add on a pattern to our jumper using our first colour again. So if we use too much paint, it might take a little bit too long to dry. Okay, now that our painting has dried for a little bit, might take 1 or 2 hours to get to this stage, it's time to add a pattern to the jumper using the first colour. So you can add in a polka dot pattern like I am. So you can grab your paintbrush and just swirl it around in a little bit of a circle to create your polka dots. If you'd like to create something different, you might like to do a polka dot or a crisscross pattern. The type of pattern that you do is up to you. You could even choose a pattern that matches the personality of your dog. So if you've got a bit of a crazy dog, you might like to do some zigzag lines. If you've got a calmer dog, you could do some straight crisscross lines or some smooth wavy lines. Or you could do a polka dot pattern like I am here for my dog that looks a little bit like a grandpa. Now the last optional step, if you have a black texture that you can use at home, is to add some detail to your doggy portrait using that black texture. So I would recommend using the black texture to make your dog's eyes stand out, and around its nose and mouth to make that stand out as well. And you want to make the other features that are really important to your dog's face stand out. So I've decided to outline my dog's moustache and eyebrows and its ears, and you definitely want to go around the outer edges of the face as well. You can also use your texture to outline some details in your background, like I have with my wallpaper bananas, and to add some more detail to the jumper. So around the collar to show the type of material it is, and around the shoulders, and I've started to outline the polka dots as well. The amount of detail you want to add is up to you. If you'd like to add more detail, you definitely can. We hope you have lots and lots of fun and get really creative with your own puppy portrait project. And we can't wait to see your finished puppy portraits. So be sure to share a picture with us if you can when you're finished, and we'll see you again for Online Art Club next week.